Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday afternoon. We are excited to have ChenMed here today to talk a little bit more about their administrative fellowship for 2024. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew Garcia, who's going to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's really good to meet everyone. Thank you guys for joining and being able to hear a little bit about what ChenMed is, a little bit of what our fellowship kind of entails, and hopefully by the end of it, you're a bit interested. So just a little background on myself, and then I can introduce Ria and Chris as well. My name is Andrew Garcia. I actually went to Johns Hopkins a few years back. I got my MHA there in 2021 now. So it's been a couple years. Um, let me see something I can admit. So I was at Hopkins a few years ago. I've been at ChenMed for the last 3 years. So I actually was a part of the fellowship, one of the first fellowship cohorts that we had in 2020. If you are familiar with the MHA program at Hopkins, we do a second year residency, where the second year we work full time. So I was working while I was still technically in school, but I've been in the organization for 3 years now, and it's been a fantastic experience. And I think we'll get a little bit more into it as we go, but I'll hand it off first to Chris and Ria to be able to talk a little bit about their experience as well.
Hi, my name is Ria Dutta. I'm one of the current fellows. I graduated from the MPH program at Johns Hopkins in 2022. And I had a little bit, I did work throughout the MPH program, but I started the fellowship about a year after I graduated. I went straight into more of a consulting role, and I worked for Johns Hopkins themselves in the global health department. And this experience has been just a way for me to combine all my different interests, because I got a certificate in health finance and management, and ChenMed was a great way to combine, clinical care and health finance and management, population health, and all those different areas in one role. So welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris, and I'm also a Hopkins graduate. Just graduated in May of 2023 with my MHA as well, just like Andrew. And I worked in a hospital system before this, and kind of got to see that side of things. And I'm really happy to be a part of this fellowship. So I'm really excited for Andrew and Ria and I to kind of go over what ChenMed has to offer. I think it's a really unique system, especially I know a lot of MPH students here, like value-based care is the future. So I'm just excited to go over the slide deck with you and hopefully convince you guys to join ChenMed.
So we can go ahead and get started then, guys. So a little bit about ChenMed. We can go to a few slides down. There we go. A little bit about ChenMed and who we are. So ChenMed is a primary care provider that specifically focuses on older adults. So we're older adult care. We deal primarily and exclusively with Medicare Advantage patients. So for us and kind of the patient population that we like to serve, we traditionally go into low income neighborhoods. We have sorry guys, I'm trying to admit people while speaking at the same time. So if I'm a little distracted, that's why. But we're a Medicare Advantage provider that gives care to older adults. And so we're going to get into a little bit about what makes us unique, why I myself really fell in love with the organization and really enjoy kind of being here. And thank you, Caroline. Appreciate that. As well as what really makes us unique compared to other providers. But who we are, our mission is to honor seniors with affordable VIP care that delivers better health, and our vision is to be America's leading primary care provider. The way that we do that, and I think it's really what makes us unique, and Chris, you can go to the next slide, is there we go, is what makes us a bit different. So the reason that I really fell in love with ChenMed, and I think what really makes the organization unique, is one, the patients we serve, but two, how we kind of do it. I'm sure you guys have been learning about it a bit in your curriculum and kind of the courses that you're taking, but something that I was really passionate about and something that I studied undergrad was public health. So that was kind of my education before I came to Hopkins. And what I was finding out as I was learning my curriculum when I was at Hopkins and kind of figuring out where I wanted to go with my fellowship, the next step in my career, I really wanted to go to an organization that leaned into population health, leaned into SDOHs, leaned into systemically making patients and communities healthier. that focused on preventative care and not too much reactive care. As you kind of go through that journey, you find that hospitals, it's very difficult to find a hospital that really does lean into that, because at the end of the day, it's just not what their financial incentive is. They are a reactive care model, which is necessary in the system, but it doesn't really cater to being preventative with healthcare. And it doesn't really cater to being able to lean into a lot of these concepts we learn in school, such as population health. What makes us a bit different is the reimbursement system that we're in. So we're a value-based care organization, meaning that we are specifically under a capitated model. We get a per member per month payment for our patients, and we are kind of responsible for taking care of all of the patients given that money. And any costs that that patient incurs, for example, going to the hospital or potentially even seeing specialists, medications, we incur those costs. And so at the end of the day, what really makes us unique is the way that we can be a profitable organization is, are we keeping patients healthy and keeping them out of the hospital, meaning that they are not decompensating with their health. And so, and this is really what really sold me with the organization, was our financial model truly is keeping patients healthy and practicing preventative medicine. So everything we do, everything that we kind of focus on in terms of how we strategize keeping patients healthy, it's at the end of the day, what is in the best interest for the patient. And I think that's what makes us really, really unique. And so a little bit more about it is, we specifically focus on low to moderate income seniors, depending on the market that we're in. And we can kind of show in a little bit how many different markets we are in. We have a very high Medicaid population. So we truly are going into communities and neighborhoods that don't really have high quality access to care. And we're making it a point that we want to enter those specific communities, because our founders, when they first started the organization, really wanted to make it a point that we give high quality care to people who would not usually get it. So we go to medically underserved communities and be able to give them this concierge style medicine, our VIP service that we like to say, and be able to really transform their health. And so we're able to do a lot of the strategies that we learn in school. And that's why I really wanted to come to the organization. But what we're able to get out of it is 33% fewer hospital admissions on average for our patients compared to the surrounding communities that they live in. So if you take the same patient, if you take two patients, for example, one lives right next to, they both live right next door to each other in the same community, our patient on average is going to have 190 more minutes of face time with their physician, and they're going to have a 33% fewer hospital admissions compared to their peer. And so that's really, at the end of the day, what those outcomes are and how it kind of looks. So I think that specifically is the difference with us and a lot of other these health systems, hospitals, and kind of healthcare organizations as a whole, is what we aim to do at the end of the day is, how are we going to keep our patients as healthy as possible? And that's our end goal. Ria, Chris, is there anything else you guys wanted to kind of mention there?
I think you hit it on right on.
All right. If we can go to the next one, then we can kind of go over a little bit more about ChenMed. So we are a really, really rapidly growing organization, and that is part of the reason why we're presenting to you all right now and why we have the fellowship, because we're really looking for leaders to stay at the organization. So the company started in South Florida, so Fort Lauderdale, Miami markets. And if you see a trend, it's we've slowly grown north and then slowly grown west. And so we're planning on opening a few markets as well next year. We don't have the final states that we're going to be entering. We're going to be finalizing that in the next month or so. But here are all of the markets that we are currently in. And we're going to get into, towards the end, how the fellowship, you can end up in one of those landing spots. So if there's a city that you see that really catches your eye, there is potential that you will be able to work there. Next slide, Chris. So now getting into and doing a little bit of a shift from ChenMed into the fellowship and what is the fellowship. This graphic kind of gives a good overview, but the first two that I really want to focus on is mentorship and shadowing. So specifically with the ChenMed fellowship, it's going to be 7 months long. It's an accelerated fellowship. So it's a bit different than some of the other fellowships at hospitals that you may see that may be a year long or a little bit longer than a year. Ours is 7 months. And the reason being is our hope and what we want out of the fellows is we're investing in you a lot, because we want you at the end of the day, once that fellowship completes, to stay with the organization and enter some type of leadership position. And we'll show you some of the journeys and what some of the positions are after that. But at the end of the day, you will be entering a leadership position when the fellowship is over. And so because of that, we have a heavy focus on shadowing and mentorship. Shadowing specifically, it's going to first start with data and analytics. That's kind of the core and kind of the basis of knowledge that we really have the fellows gain. And it really is the key to the success over the last 4 years of all of the fellows. So from there and doing a data analytics rotation, you're also going to be rotating within the centers. So actually being in the primary care clinics, seeing how day-to-day operations run from the physician standpoint, from a director standpoint, from the front desk to the medical assistants, wherever it may be. After you do that rotation, you're then going to come back to the data analytics team, and you're going to start shadowing different teams within the organization. Those teams consist of our finance team, consist of our medical cost team, consist of our marketing team, our payer relation team, as well as our actuarial team. The reason that we really have a heavy focus on shadowing all aspects of the business is we, want our leader fellows to kind of get a very good idea of how the business runs as a whole. They have a very clear picture, 360, how we really function. Second, we also want to expose all of you to see what type of direction and what type of career you want to take with your next step. We don't have one specific path for a fellow where they go into operations and run the clinic, or they stay kind of more on the centralized corporate route and go into finance. It varies among the fellowship and it varies among every single person. We want to expose you to everything. That way you can kind of see where you fit best, where you can have the biggest impact. And then once you do get exposed, then we're going to have directed projects and directed mentorship towards that specific area of expertise. And then the last is really being able to facilitate connections. When you're shadowing a lot of different teams, you're going to be able to meet a lot of different leaders in the organization. And with that comes a lot of being able to network to find future positions, whether it's working in the organization, outside the organization, whatever it may be, but it allows you to really kind of build up your network as well. And the second piece that I really want to touch on is the mentorship. You will have weekly one-on-ones with myself. I realized I didn't really do an introduction in the beginning of my title. So my name is Andrew Garcia. I did go to Hopkins, but my title is I'm one of the directors of national operations here at the organization, and I'm the director of the fellowship. So you'd be having weekly one-on-ones with me. But on top of that, each fellow is going to be designated an executive mentor. That mentor will be potentially a vice president of operations. It could be a chief of staff. It could be a director of national operations like myself, or it could be even someone from our executive team. So mine, for example, when I was a fellow, was our chief HR officer. His name was Jim Whitling. He's absolutely fantastic. He actually still is our chief HR officer. But the reason we also do that is we kind of understand in this fellowship, it is a time for growth and it's a time for learning. We want you to be able to have a mentor that's kind of structured where you can go to them for any questions or advice, or they can even help facilitate your growth, not only as a professional and as a leader, but also as a person. So we really want to make sure those are the two kind of pillars, so to speak, of what the fellowship really are. You can go to the next slide, Chris, and we can kind of go over what the timeline looks like. I mentioned it was a 7th-month fellowship. So for the first 3 months, it is heavy in data analytics. You'll be doing a quote unquote boot camp where you're going to be learning how we use data at the organization, how we're data driven, where to find data, how to analyze it, and then most importantly, how to be able to present that and make it actionable. So how can you actually operationalize all of the data that we're learning here at the org? From there, that is when you're going to go into the clinics, into the centers, and be able to really interact with staff and patients, be able to see how we run those clinics on a day-to-day basis. For me, I'm a fairly extroverted person. I really love people, and I also really love interacting with patients. After I did this operations rotation, I was very head set that that was the direction I wanted to go, and that ended up being the direction I did go. So it varies on the person, varies on the fellow, but more often than not, after that operations kind of tenure in the training, most fellows really kind of fall in love with it and fall in love with the aspect of being able to see patients on a daily basis, and then also being able to impact them with whatever strategic initiative that you come up with. From there, you will come back, and so you'll be back under the data team, and you'll be having 3 key responsibilities. first and foremost, you're going to be assigned a regional vice president. And our idea is, and kind of the vision that we have, we want you to be paired with a regional vice president to provide them support with analytics. It could be an initiative that they want to do with the organization. It could be anything, projects that they really want to do. But we want to assign you a regional vice president in the region or city that you're interested in moving to. So say you have family in New Orleans, for example, and you really want to potentially run a clinic there. We'll pair you with that regional VP. That way you can, one, get that exposure and learn from them, but two, you can really start to showcase your skills. That way it puts you in a great position to actually be able to get that future job once the fellowship concludes. This is also when you're going to be doing those rotations that I mentioned with the finance team, our marketing team, medical cost team. And then the last piece is you will be under the national operations umbrella, which is the team I'm on. Because of that, you will also be given projects and initiatives on that team. A couple of examples of things that we're doing right now. We're looking at our Medicaid patients and specifically how we can make sure that they retain benefits and really integrate that with some social determinants of health as well. So how are we going to take our patients who are on Medicaid and really translate that to see what SDOHs they're suffering from and then connecting them with those resources available. So that's a project that the fellows are going to start working on the next few weeks, but it varies. And this is kind of the structure. So it's 7 months, June to January. And then after that January kind of month, that is when we're actually going to help facilitate and help you find the placement of what your long-term home is going to be at the organization. And so for the first 7 months, you are actually going to, you can go to the next slide, Chris. Everyone will be residing in Miami for those first 7 months. So those 7 months, it will be in Miami in the past, and we will try to help out again in this future cohort. We found a couple options for 7th month leases to help you find a place. You can choose to live there, you can choose not to, but we will at least give you an option of somewhere that you can live. And then once those 7 months is up, that's kind of what I was alluding to before, where you can kind of go anywhere that you want. If you're really interested in operations, any one of these markets that has an open position, you can apply and you can potentially go to. And so there are a lot of places that you can go to. We are moving further west. I know we get that question quite a bit. I don't have for sure timeline on how far west we will be in the next few years, but I can tell you that we are looking to continue to expand towards the west. And then this is the last slide I'll go over, and then I'll hand it off to Ria and Chris to talk a little bit about their experience in the fellowship so far, as well as kind of introduce themselves and some of the other leaders that we have. But the reason I'm putting this slide and responsibilities of a leader is this is kind of the ideal candidate that we're really looking for. And it's not to say that you need to have all of these competencies to get a position at the fellowship. It's more so the opposite. These are the skills that you'll learn once you enter the fellowship. We want to really build well-rounded leaders and well-rounded healthcare professionals because we want them, again, to stay at the organization with us. Our vision is once this fellowship concludes, you will be entering a leadership position. You very well may have people report to you and staff report to you. So we want to create kind of a fellowship experience that is really going to help facilitate that growth within you. And so we're not necessarily looking for any one of these things. These are things that you will learn. What we're looking for and the candidate we're looking for, because we're going to be taking 5 fellows for next June, is we're looking for someone who really wants to grow, really has that desire to be a leader, has that ambition to grow and really expedite their career, because this is kind of the organization and the opportunity where you'll be able to do exactly that. And we'll get in a little bit later about some past fellows and kind of where they're at now, and you can kind of see the trajectory that they've taken with their career. But that's kind of the prototypical candidate that we're looking for, so to speak. So with that, I've been speaking quite a bit for the last 20 minutes. I'm going to hand it off to Ria and Chris, and they can talk a little bit about their experience in the fellowship so far.
Chris, I think you're muted still, but if you want to go first, go ahead.
Ria. Sorry, I was trying to, the mute button wasn't showing up.
No, that's okay. So just we've been in the fellowship program since June, so it's been about 3 months or so. And our fellowship was the timeline of it was just a little bit different. We started off in the centers and we shadowed all the different roles in the centers to start with. And then now we're in analytics and we've been doing 360 deep dives at different markets. And we've been doing just what Andrew was talking about. We rotated through all the different areas, med cost, care delivery, and membership growth and talent. And we did a lot of like deep dives really into all these different markets, and we presented to the RVPs and the teams there. So that's been a really, really great experience for us. We just had our last 360 deep dive yesterday, and it was Philadelphia. And, just the progress of our team from the first one till, what we presented yesterday is a night and day difference. And that's just, a testament to like how much we've been learning in analytics. And it's been a really, really great experience so far. Part of the ChenMed experience is that you are learning something new constantly, like every single day throughout the whole day. And now we're working on, different projects. So something that I'm involved in now is like the flu campaign, and they really have you involved. Like we're meeting with all the different team members, a lot of the corporate members, just to see how we can help with the flu initiative this year and how we can get more patients vaccinated. So it's been a great experience, and I hope you guys can be a part of it.
Yeah, Ria nailed it. That's exactly, like, it's been such a great fellowship so far. We're in like month number 4 now, and honestly, I love it. It's crazy. I was doing kind of similar work last year for a health system, and then like moving to ChenMed and really the value-based care world. I'm doing similar work on like a much another level, but I'm enjoying it much more. And I think it really ties back to our love, accountability, and passion that Andrew talked about earlier. It's very evident through like everything we do here at ChenMed. And with every project, they kind of tie it in to back to like love, accountability, and passion. So one project I'm working on, for example, is emergency notification systems and trying to help reduce length of stay for our patients to make sure they're getting out of the hospital quicker and we're seeing them and reducing readmission rates for them. So you get to like really work on a lot of stuff that ties back to public health and kind of ties back to also the value-based care world, because that's where we're in. And everyone here is so supportive. I can tell you that, like Andrew Garcia, Jocelyn, you're going to meet so many people that are part of the fellowship and even outside of the fellowship that are always here to support you. And you can message them or email them, and then they're going to answer, and they're going to hop on a call with you and help explain things. So being a fellow here, I've learned that it's very valued. So yeah.
Something that I also double down a bit. And it really is. When I was in undergrad and kind of in grad school, I had a really big passion for public health, and that was something that I really wanted to pursue. But I think as I was in it, I was struggling to find a way where I could really merge that with where the current healthcare system in America is. And it was really difficult for me to kind of compromise on what I wanted to do by just simply going and working for a hospital and maybe working for, say, some type of population health program in a hospital. But at the end of the day, they don't really lean into it because that's just not what's going to keep their lights on, so to speak. And so with ChenMed and kind of the financial reimbursement system we're in, where we truly are incentivized to keep patients healthy, we have kind of the autonomy to do a lot of the things and strategies that we learn about when we're in school. And so when I was a center director, when I was running a couple of clinics in New Orleans, we were really able to lean into how are we going to connect patients with resources to help them outside of the 4 walls of the clinic. And it's a concept that like we always learn about in school of how can we kind of bridge that gap and extend the healthcare umbrella to being outside of the clinic and being in the community. And we did that we connected, and I made connections with a couple of food banks in New Orleans, a gym so they could get a free gym membership for all of our patients. And also a lot of our patients, specifically in the areas that we were in, suffered from dementia and Alzheimer's or something along those lines for a similar diagnosis, which comes with really high cost care if you need around the clock care. And so we made connections with some local nonprofits as well as some local senior centers that would be able to facilitate free care for them around the clock, at least during work hours, to assist with those families, especially because when we're looking at our patients being very low income, it's going to be difficult for them to get those resources. And so if you're looking for an organization that can really kind of have the autonomy to bridge those gaps and have the autonomy when you get here to do those initiatives and kind of connect patients with a lot of these social resources that you learn about in that's why we can do it. And I think that's what makes us really different than a lot of other organizations that you may be looking at. That being said, Chris, could you really talk a little bit about the application process? So the application deadline to submit the application is going to be on October 1st. One moment. So
I don't know.
October 1st.
Sorry, Andrew. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you very well. No. So yeah, I'll just take over until Andrew can hop back on. But so for the application process, this is just a visual for how the application process is expected to look like. So in the next slide, we're going to have a QR code that you can scan and which takes you to the application.
Can you hear me a bit better?
Yes, much better. Much better, yeah, much better. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So apologies about that, guys. I've been having issues with my laptop the last 2 days. But the application deadline is October 1st. So the only requirement that we have for that initial application is going to be your resume as well as a cover letter. So just under 200 words, what interests you about ChenMed and what's kind of interested you about the fellowship. From there, you'll have an initial interview with current and past fellows. So that'll be Chris, Ria, and also graduates of the fellowship that we've had in past years. After that, and this is kind of the last part of the interview process, is once you get past that first interview stage, we're going to give every candidate a case study. That case study varies, but it's really around some type of thought process and problem solving. So for example, what we did in my year when I was interviewing and kind of applying for the fellowship is I had to do a market analysis on a new market that we should enter. So I had to think about things like, what is the Medicare Advantage penetration in the county or the state that I was looking in? What is the physician to patient ratio? Who are the competitors? What does the competitive landscape look like? Where should we place the centers given the population of where seniors live? And put that all into a PowerPoint presentation and presented that to, at the time, the director of the program. It'll be a very similar project, most likely, that you guys will all do, should you choose to kind of go through the application process. And once you submit that case study, which you'll have about a week to do, you'll be able to present that to myself, as well as Madeline Haftel, who's another senior director of national operations here at the organization. The one thing I'll say about this is I say it every single year, and usually only one or two actually reach out, and those one or two have a good track record of getting accepted to the program. But please feel free to reach out during that case study to ask for help. Something that I think is unique about the fellowship is you really have, and we make it a point that you feel supported throughout the entire process of the fellowship, not just during, but after, and as well as before. We want to make it a point that if you're seeking the help, if you're looking to get kind of some guidance or direction, we will be able to give that to you during the interview process. If you can go to the next slide, Chris. This is just some very quick FAQs. If you have them, you can take a look at this after we will send those slides out. But right here is a QR code that will send you directly to the application link that we have. You can also just look up Accelerated Leadership Fellow or Accelerated Leader Fellowship at ChenMed and click on that first link. You'll be able to find it there as well. So now getting into a bit more of the fun stuff, which is looking at the outcomes of what past fellows have done and kind of really showing and exemplifying kind of what we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes. Over the last few years, we've recruited from 18 different grad programs so far. On the call, you have 3 from Hopkins, so it's kind of timely. We've had 42 fellows come through and 95% placement after the completion of the fellowship. So I mentioned that the fellowship was accelerated. It's 7 months. And our goal is we want those fellows to be leaders in the organization. And so 95% placement, I think, says a couple things. One, that we really do mean it when we say we will help you through that process, and we want to help you find a position at the organization where you will be leading and leading people. But it also kind of shows that even after the fellowship, the fellows are choosing themselves to stay. And I think that's a testament not only to the fellowship, but the organization and the culture of the organization. And if you go to the next slide, Chris, it kind of gives an outline of what positions and where fellows are now. And so it really is meaningful and true when we say that you will be entering leadership positions, because these are the positions that all of the fellows have either ended up in or started in. So for myself, for example, my journey was I became a center director in training, which is on the bottom right, where I was learning how to run my own medical clinic. Eventually became a center executive director, regional business director, and then eventually now I'm one of the directors of national operations. But if you look across kind of all of both sides of this slide, you'll see all of the different types of roles that fellows have gotten after this. So you see product manager, operations strategy, manager of clinical applications, director of analytic products. And then when we look at specifically long-term and a little bit of the fellows who've been here for quite a bit. So my fellowship, we have myself, I'm a national director of operations. We have a regional vice president who is George Payne. We have a chief of staff of marketing, which is Alexander King. And we also have a director of analytic products, which was Jake. So those were all people who were in my cohort of the fellowship. And so I think it really goes to show that the fellowship not only helps you get that first leadership position once you complete it, but it trains you so well that and the way I like to put it is it really exponentially grew my career, as well as all of the other fellows that we've kind of onboarded with, because we received such an excellent training, specifically in data and 360 view of the organization, that it didn't matter where we were able to create real-time impact very quickly. And so we were able to show that our value in the organization was very high. And because of that, that's what's helped all of us really grow so quickly. And I think if you're looking for an organization, you're looking for a position where you can really grow your career, grow yourself as a leader, and learn a lot about value-based care, this is really like the opportunity in the organization for you. And so the last slide that I want to go over is just some past fellows and some examples of what they did with their journey. Maddie on the bottom, she is the senior director of national operations. She had a very, very similar track to mine. But Jake is one that I want to go over because it's the non-operations route where he did not actually go into the clinic or run a clinic. He actually stayed a little bit more on the data side. After his fellowship, he became the senior manager of data analytics and optimization. He then became the associate director, then the director, and now he's the director of analytic products and strategy. So he's working on all of the analytics that we have for the organization, as well as starting to really look into how we can use predictive analytics to integrate into our healthcare system, and how we can kind of use that and utilize that with predicting our patients getting sick, staying healthy, going to the hospital, etc. So it does vary. And I think the point of the fellowship is we want you to find where in the organization you're going to fit best. And once you do, that's really just the stepping stone for what your career is going to look like at the org. But that being said, there was a lot of word vomit there for about 40 minutes. I do want to stop and give all of you guys the opportunity to ask us any questions that you may have. It could be about the organization, the fellowship, our experiences, projects we worked on, anything it may be. But if not, I just want to go ahead and give it back to you guys.
So I have allowed everyone to unmute themselves if they'd like to come off mute and ask questions, or if you'd like to put questions in the chat, and we can certainly read them off that way.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. That was super informative. I had 2 questions, if that's okay. My first question is, do you only take students who are currently in the graduate program? I wasn't sure about that. Or would it be okay if I applied like after I graduated my master's?
So I was one of those students who applied after I graduated. So we do
Okay.
accept.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then my next question was, what kinds of experience did you have before applying that kind of helped you decide, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I can so for the first question, just to also clarify on both sides, is as long as you have graduated by June of 2024, which is when the start of the fellowship would be, that's all that matters. So you can be in the program right now as long as you've graduated. That is really all that matters. And I think the question was, what experiences did I have before this to kind of lead me to the fellowship?
Yeah.
Got it. For me, it was I've had a bit of a different path actually. So my experience before this was really around in nonprofit work and a lot of nonprofit work around children. So funny enough, it was a big 360 going from children to older adults, but it for me was a lot of similarities in the sense that they're both very vulnerable populations. And so I think that was easily transferable for me. And with that, I had a lot of experience in like building curriculum, leading teams, specifically leading teams around kind of a shared mission and shared goal. So that was what was unique to me and kind of the journey that got me here. But for me, the big selling point was when I was in my MHA, I was learning about value-based care and primary care models that really lean into value-based care. And I was, for me, when I got this presentation, this exact presentation, it was like a light bulb that went off and said, this is the perfect fit for me.
Well, that sounds great. And sorry I couldn't get my video on. My Wi-Fi has been all fuzzy, so thank you. I really appreciate it.
I think you're muted, Andrew.
Hi, I had a question. I'm a recent MPH graduate from Hopkins, and I have more than 7 years of experience across federal public health program implementation, health communications, policy advocacy in India. My question was, would I be eligible as an international applicant for this fellowship? I am on an OPT and I would not require sponsorship in the coming years. So just wanted to get an idea about the eligibility.
Just a quick clarification, you were saying that you would or would not require sponsorship?
I will not require sponsorship.
Got it. Yes, short answer, yes, you would be definitely eligible to apply and get the position. I will say in the past, we also still have sponsored students. That's something that we're working through right now to see if we want to continue doing that. But in the past, we have. But regardless, short answer to that question is yes.
Sure, thank you so much. And thank you so much for holding this session.
Of course, thank you. So Jamiko, I see you have your hand raised and you
Yes.
posted a question in the chat. Do you want to?
Yes. Thank you so much. I posted the question in chat. First, I'd like to say, yeah, ChenMed sounds like a really amazing organization. And I really like the fact that you're so mission driven. And so for me, I would like to know, like, what qualities, like, does your ideal candidate have? And I know that might be difficult to say, but what are the characteristics and experiences set your successful candidates apart from the rest? It seems like you all come from very different like professional backgrounds, and obviously you're put on different tracks. So it would be helpful to hear more about answer those questions, and also to hear more about how the program catered to those different interests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll start off with the experiences first. We were very intentional with the fact that we're presenting and recruiting to graduate school programs. And we kind of have the understanding that there are going to be applicants specifically that went potentially from undergrad straight to grad school, and then this may be their first job that they're applying for. We really do encourage that. And I think I'm a really good example of that. I'm pretty honest about it. I went straight from undergrad to grad school, and this was kind of the first opportunity that I had of entering the healthcare workforce. But in terms of experiences, we don't have a required years of experience for the role, because the mindset that we have is we want people who are, and this answers the first part of the question, I hope, are interested in healthcare and really interested in transforming care of communities. That's the biggest thing. And that's why we're really recruiting from MPH programs, MHA programs, and similar programs. So in terms of experiences, it's not necessarily that we have requirement for experiences. It's much more so what type of candidate are we looking for? And it's a candidate that is really aligned with the mission that we have. So they really have the intentions of, they want to go into these communities and really transform. And the second part is, I think you really need to have kind of that desire and that ambition to be a leader, because at the end of the day, once this fellowship concludes, you will be in a leadership position. In mine, for example, once my fellowship concluded, I had about 25 staff directly report to me. So it is challenging, but we are going to put you in a position where you will succeed. And so I think if you have that ambition and you have that drive, this is really like the perfect place for you. And like the only other thing I'll say, and I got this piece of advice when I was actually, I believe, in high school, and it's stuck with me. And I think it's true for the majority of experiences you have, not just in this fellowship, but just in life, is you will only get out as much as you put in. And I think that's really true for the fellowship as well. We will really help you and facilitate the opportunities for you, but the fellows that end up being more successful and most successful are the ones that really make it a point to build connections, build up their network, build up experiences, ask people if they can jump on a project, learn from them, go out of their way to learn. And so I think that's really the ideal applicant that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Of course. Any others? All right.
I had another question, just a quick question, because I joined in
Please.
a little later. I wanted to also know that how long the fellowship duration is. Is it 1 year or a couple of years? And then I also wanted to just understand the location of the fellowship.
Absolutely. So the fellowship is 7 months. It's an accelerated fellowship. So it's a bit shorter than a lot of the other opportunities that you may see out there. Reason being because we do want you to stay at the organization and enter a leadership position. With how quickly we're growing, this is kind of our pipeline that we have for leaders at the org. So that's the first part. The second part is for those first 7 months, all of the fellows, because there's a cohort of 5, all of those fellows will be in Miami. And so you'll be in Miami for those first 7 months. And then after those first 7 months, you have the ability to go to any market that we kind of exist in based on what opportunity you're looking for, what position you're looking for, and what really has piqued your interests.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Jamiko, I see your hand raised.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about the internal culture of the organization? So you mentioned that you had 25 people reporting to you when you first started, which I wonder, I'm like, okay, were those people like your same age? Were they older than you? What was that like? So it seems like with a program, like an accelerated program, you have like this pipeline of young leaders coming in, and I don't really have a sense of like the diversity within the organization. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So let me first speak to diversity of the organization. I think one example that I do want to give, and I hope it answers it a bit, and then we'll get back to the other, is the organization makes it a point that we want to be very culturally cognizant of the communities that we're entering. And so when I say that, I mean, for example, when I was in Fort Lauderdale and Broward, in the position that I had where there were 25 people reporting to me, we were in an area where there was a high Haitian Creole speaking population, as well as a high Hispanic speaking population. What we do and the way that we hire specifically support staff as well as physicians being the most important role, is we hire based on the demographic that we're in. If we have a high Haitian Creole speaking population, and that is the demographic of that community, we will hire those physicians. So we had 7 physicians and I was there. 2 of those were Haitian Creole speaking. We had 2 from Hispanic descent that were Spanish speaking. And then there was actually a small Russian population. And so we actually had a Russian descent, Russian speaking physician. And so we make it a point that if we're going to be hiring those physicians, we also want to hire the support staff that is also representative of the cultures that we're going to be serving. And the reason that we do that, and I think you guys probably know this because you're in the School of Public Health and we kind of learn about this a little bit as well, is there's, especially in some of the communities and some of the states that we're in the South, there is a lot of distrust potentially with the medical profession. I've had actually patients who had family members that were in, like, for example, Tuskegee. And so there is a very, very fragile kind of relationship that you have with the medical profession. And so we want to make sure that if we're going to be treating these patients, they can be able to be treated from someone that has a similar experience to them, has had a similar lived experience to them. And so that's kind of how we kind of recruit and make sure how we can stay very culturally aware of who we're serving. In terms of, and then the first part of the question, Jamiko, I think was what is like the internal culture of the organization look like?
Yes.
Got you. I think that's the biggest reason I've stayed at the organization, to be honest, was the culture. My favorite quote, and it's super cheesy, and I know, but it's a leadership theory quote, and his name is Peter Drucker. It's culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that's the most, I remember hearing it in grad school, and I remember just really resonating with it because you could have the best strategy in the world. We have a great model where we get to take care of patients. It's a great organization, but if the culture of the organization isn't great, people aren't going to stay. You need people to actually execute on the model. And if you don't have an organization that really values people and values the culture of a team, you're not going to succeed. And I think that's really been highlighted with ChenMed. I think when you look across the last few years, every single market that we have has been nominated best workplace to work in healthcare, almost in every single state that we're in. And that's completely based on surveys, and what we call them pulse surveys, but surveys that are anonymous of our staff, asking them how they feel valued. Do they feel loved at the organization? Do they feel that they add something to not only the patients' lives, but their lives? And so for me, it really has been an amazing experience. But I think I can give it to Rhea and Chris because they've also just joined.
Yeah, I know when before I joined and I was like applying for the fellowship, I heard, we heard the same like love, accountability, and passion. They talked a lot about culture. And I was so hesitant. I was like you keep talking about culture. Like I was so worried about coming. I was like, you emphasize culture so much. Like I feel like it's too good to be true. And we spent a month in analytics, and I can tell you everything that Andrew just said is absolutely 100% accurate. Like diversity also within corporate is very diverse, and people really do treat each other with respect, and they do want to help each other out. So I would say it's 100% accurate what Andrew said. They make it, I mean, our values are love, accountability, and passion. And I think that's what kind of sets us apart from everyone else. And it's 100% true. I was really hesitant, but I can tell you with like a certainty, I wouldn't be speaking here today if I didn't truly believe what they had said. So
Yeah, adding on to what Chris said, I mean, have you heard of any other organization that has love in their mission, values? There's nobody. And really, like that love, accountability, and passion, it really shows in every single aspect of the company, starting from the centers. Like you can feel it. And with not just like the patients, but the staff, everybody just really comes together and you really feel it, and it just trickles on. It like goes on up. And no, and Chris and I, we were in the centers, and now we're in analytics, and that sense of just like coming together and really helping each other, and just like going from there. It's there. It's hard to describe unless you're in there, but yeah, I mean it's really there.
yeah, and I think one thing I really liked was all the offices for all the executives. It's clear, so you can see like right through. So it's really like an open door policy too, even with like upper leadership. So I thought that was like really cool.
That's awesome. Thank y'all so much.
Of course. Any others?
I had another question. On your form, it mentions which track would you be interested in? Would you be interested in the corporate track or the operations track? So I wanted to know if you say enter corporate track, but then over time, over the course of 7 months, you want to move over to the operations track because you feel that you probably would be a better fit there, or vice versa. Would that be how would the organization react to that, and would that be accommodated later on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one clarification I want to make is you don't need to decide what track you go to. When we're saying track, it was more so saying that they decided to go this route and that was their track in their career. When the fellows come, I encourage all of them, and I really hope that I know Ria and Chris are keeping an open mind, but I really encourage fellows to have an open mind when they're doing their shadowing and they're doing their rotations, because you don't know, you can have a good idea of what you want coming in, and then as you just kind of alluded to, could change. As long as you're going through the process and you're deciding what is going to be a best fit for you, you can change as many times as you want. And then whatever you end up deciding at that very end, that's what we're going to make sure that we can find a position for you in.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, that too. I think like Andrew showed the paths of the other fellows in the past, and I know we're not really stuck to one thing. So if you want to do operations after your fellowship and then transition to corporate, that's okay too. And that's what's cool about the fellowship is we're doing projects with different teams and different like strategy, social determinants of health, and all that stuff. And you get to really find out what you like and what you don't like. And Andrew meets with us all the time, and we tell him like, "Hey, this is interesting now. I think we're leading this way." It like happens all the time, so don't worry at all. Like you can always change even after your fellowship.
Right. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, well, I know we are just at almost at 1 o'clock here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I just want to take a moment to thank Andrew and Christopher and Ria for sharing your experience. I mean, it really sounds like you work for an incredible organization and you all have just had a wonderful experience, and hopefully this will result in some applicants. Did want to ask if folks had questions for you coming out of this session. Is there a place that they could email or reach out to you with questions?
Absolutely. On the PowerPoint that we have, you have all of the emails of the current fellows. So if you want to reach out to any of those, you can. Let me also put in my email and also my phone number. I'll say, please just text me instead or give me a call. I think it's a bit easier than an email, just because I get a lot of emails in a day, and I want to make sure none of them accidentally go to like the junk mail. But please
Excellent.
feel free to reach out to anyone here. I'm more than willing to have a conversation or jump on an additional call.
Perfect. Well, thank you all again so much for taking some time on a Friday afternoon to speak with us. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Amazing.
good
Thank
one.
you so much, Caroline. Appreciate you. Have a
Bye-bye.
great day, y'all.